of Go With The Flow. We're recording here on April 24th on Monday. The second round matchups in the 2017 Stanley Cup playoffs are all set to go. And as always, I'm joined by my partners, Dan Maratz and Kevin Barman. This is Nick Phelps. What's going on, fellas?
How's it going, everybody?
What's up, boys?
So, obviously, like I said, we know the second round matchups had a few interesting ends to some series. No game sevens in the first round, which was kind of surprising based on the number of games that went to overtime and how tight a lot of the hockey was. But before we jump into our analysis of what went down in the conference quarterfinal first round series, in round two, and matchups we're looking forward to, predictions, just kind of diving deep into round two up here. I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping issues. All issues, coach, player movement, and such goes. So I guess we'll start. We touched on it in the last podcast, but surfacing when we had taped our show last week that possible that Jack Eichel was going to refuse to sign extension in Buffalo if Disco Dan Bilesma was going to remain at the helm in Buffalo. And I think we'd kind of mentioned that, you kind of have to almost cater to a superstar like Eichel. And not 24 hours after recording, it seems as though that those reports were legitimate, where there was smoke, there was fire, as Dan Bilesma and Jack Eichel gets his way. So, boys, when you guys want to jump right into it, your initial thoughts on Buffalo moving away from Bilesma. And also they fired their GM, so kind of a front office and coaching overhaul, and it's pretty clear that Eichel's the guy they're catering to and is calling the shots. So, boys, your thoughts?
Yeah, it sucks for Bilesma. He's kind of a guy that I've liked as a coach and just kind of as a general. He seems like a pretty cool dude, but at the same time, Eichel right now for Buffalo, that's their future, and they definitely have to cater to that right now. And so, obviously Eichel wasn't happy with Bilesma, so who do you keep? A head coach that effectively is replaceable, especially with a bunch of other coaches being fired in the league this year. Or do you, risk not signing, your first round draft pick just a couple of years ago? So obviously the coach is going to go first before Eichel gets lost. And if I was a player on Buffalo, I would take that coach firing pretty personally. They've got a lot of other talent. Ryan O'Reilly's a big name. He's getting paid a ridiculous amount of money to be in Buffalo. Evander Kane's another one. And they're a team that maybe, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs anytime soon, but you would think that they would be finishing better than what they are. Despite all these additions, they're still at the bottom of the barrel in the East. So, I would take that firing of Bilesma to heart as a player, take some responsibility, because obviously they're not getting the job done. But it doesn't surprise me that they picked Eichel over Bilesma, because like I said, that's your future right there. So you can't really get rid of him.
Yeah, it's pretty insane that they let a 20-year-old kid hold a gun to their head. And at the end of the day, it's the right move, because, like you said, Eichel's he's the face of the franchise going forward. But I think with the pool of candidates that are out there now for the new head coach for Buffalo, I think they can make a good replacement. One of my early favorites was Lindy Ruff, especially because he spent a majority of his career playing there. So I think going forward, it was definitely the right thing to do. But like you said, Dan, Bilesma seems like a guy who has a good relationship with his players and just a good guy overall. So it should be really interesting going forward.
It's pretty interesting too. Firing the GM Murray as well. Buffalo's roster, and of course the Eichel pick, number 2 overall, behind McDavid, like an absolute home run pick with the way that guy performed down the stretch after his camp injury. But on the other side of the token, you've also got Reinhart, who's completely underperforming. Ristolainen's a really nice defensive piece there, but you also bring in Kulikov in that offseason trade with Florida, and that was kind of a bust. So and
Don't forget
they
about
also made
Poso
another.
either.
Yeah, they brought in Oposo, and O'Reilly's production had dipped. Oposo's getting big money. Reinhardt's kind of underperforming. The defense needs work, of course. Lehner showed some signs, but the goaltending is always going to be in question there. They haven't really found the guy since when they traded Ryan Miller to the Blues. They really haven't found a consistent net-minding presence back there. But at the overall construction of the roster, there was a lot of nice, really intriguing pieces. And outside of Eichel and Ristolainen, there wasn't a whole lot of development taking place with their young talent. So I think, a lot of times a guy in your front office will, your general manager is going to be the one making the call on, these are the guys I drafted. Our scouting staff thinks highly of these guys. They're not developing. They're not there. But obviously, ownership probably was optimistic about a lot of the guys. The Pujols on the, they were probably really high in the prospect of a lot of these kids working out. And other than Eichel and Ristolainen, they don't really have a whole lot going for them other than some players getting some money. And obviously O'Reilly's a nice piece, but it's easy to see how they would fire both Bilesma and the front office because, some of the picks aren't working out and they're not developing. And that's the scouting staff. It's an indictment on the general manager, and, the head coach has to have the pulse on his players more than everybody. And, when you've got a guy like Eichel, who's the best player on your team, who doesn't want to play for the coach, I think that shows that Bilesma didn't really have a pulse on the team altogether. So interesting, but, Ruff's an interesting name to throw out there for sure. So is that kind of your pick, Kev? If you had to guess, or, Lindy's
Lindy
getting
Ruff?
up there, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of sort of seeing a trend nowadays, not only in hockey, but in sports where, guys are going back to coach teams they used to play for. So, and I mean, not to mention he's also a really good coach. So,
And
yeah,
he's taken them to a cup before and
Yeah,
gotten them
he
close.
coached them before.
Yeah. Right. Huge tenure there. So
Yeah, he would be my pick too.
yeah, Lindy would be an interesting.
Yeah, he would definitely be.
Certainly an interesting.
Oh, go for it, Nick. Sorry.
No, you can take it away. He'd be a very interesting pick.
Yeah, he definitely would. And Kevin, like you mentioned, the trend thing I think is what is making me lean towards him being the pick. You got Randy Carlisle's back in Anaheim, Claude Julien's back in Montreal. Hitchcock is going back to Dallas. That would actually be kind of interesting. Hitchcock going back to Dallas and Ruff going back to Buffalo in the same year, because those were the two coaches that met up in the '99 final between Dallas and Buffalo. So yeah, I don't see why he wouldn't be a pick for Buffalo. It seemed kind of logical. He's had success there in the past, and he's good with young talent. So hopefully, he can kind of develop Eichel and light a fire under the guys that are there, like we were saying, Ryan O'Reilly, Evander Kane, a bunch of other guys that maybe are kind of underperforming. The interesting thing with Oposo, though, is he's been in the hospital forever with some sort of serious illness or something.
Yeah, he got released. Released. Yeah,
he just got released
a week ago. I mean, with him right now,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Lindy Ruff would definitely be my pick as well for Buffalo.
I saw an interesting point. Once the regular season had ended, and some teams were possibly thinking about making a coaching change based on underperforming in the playoffs, perhaps. Which obviously I don't think any of the coaches who are in the playoffs this year are going to be losing their jobs or anything. But you got to be careful sometimes about who you fire, and it's a pretty incestuous industry, as Dan astutely pointed out, with a lot of guys returning home. A lot of teams seem to be making safe picks, but at the same time, if you make a coaching change, you got to be careful of, is it the right time to let this guy go? And if I let this guy go, his future. I mean, you look at McClellan takes out his old team in San Jose, and Mike Yeo takes out his old club and in 5 games. So you've got a lot of guys that can there's the guys like Bilesma and stuff, track record to an extent. Obviously, Bilesma, he's won a cup when he took over in 2009. So he's still a younger coach. He's coached some really good players, and guys like Crosby, Malkin, Michael, they've all thrived. So yeah, he's a guy that contender for a job, even as soon as next year. So teams just got to be wary about who they let go, because it could come back to bite them. And I think in the case of the LA Kings, getting rid of Sutter could work somewhere, but they also recognized that they didn't want to fire the whole staff. So real quick, if we want to talk about John Stevens, he was the assistant in LA. I believe he's been there for both of their cups, and he got elevated from assistant to head coach in LA. So on that, obviously, it's pretty interesting that a guy who's on the same staff, performing core the last few years or so, kind of gets promoted when maybe you're thinking Sutter gets let go because they need a new voice behind the bench. But, Stevens gets elevated. And thoughts on this, boys?
I thought the two moves in firing Sutter and then bringing out Stevens was kind of contradicting in a way, because like you said, like firing Sutter, maybe you're just trying to find a new voice behind the bench, or just head a new direction. But when you bring in a guy, up from an assistant job, it just seems like something you do when like you're kind of there, but you just need to make the next step. I thought that LA would go, kind of explore their options, especially with the plethora of coaches that are out there right now. So, and Stevens is a pretty unknown guy for the most part. I mean, I sure didn't know much about him when I first saw the news, but it's an interesting hire for sure, and one that I'm going to say I don't really think was smart, in that they should have, looked more.
Yeah, I everything that you just said, I pretty much completely agree with. I don't know anything about him. I'm not even sure I was aware that he was the assistant coach. To be brutally honest. And Kevin,
let's cut this part.
Okay.
I think it's better off in a podcast. We should try to be the experts on stuff, That makes that it's no problem at all that, we don't know who certain people are, but I don't think we should just outright say it, because we're supposed to be
true.
We want to be a source for opinions and stuff. So I could even give you some information to make you sound smart if you want to chime in.
I mean, I just pulled up his Wikipedia page.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think in the future
No, that makes complete sense.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's had a tenure with Philadelphia. He got fired. I think he actually replaced Hitchcock, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. He just think.
Oh, I forgot to pause.
Oh, you know what? He was the guy that got fired the year Laviolette took over and took him to the Cup.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah. So they were
yeah.
how, so you could talk about how, and also what time are we at? Do we know? So,
I let it run a little long, Kevin. I think this cut is going to be right around the 12.5-minute mark. We're at 13:43 right now. I forgot to pause it. So
yeah.
Probably around 12.5 minutes.
You could say Phil, okay. So here's what you can say. Hawk, kind of a rough start, made the playoffs, and then in the 2010 season, they were a pretty heavy Stanley Cup favorite. They were pretty favored to go to the Cup and whatever. A really bad start. They were just kind of
okay.
They were outside looking into the playoffs after being a Cup favorite, and then to replace him, and then he took them to the Cup. So
okay.
And then he just signed the next year, just joined the Kings organization. He's been an assistant ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
That works. Are we resetting what Kevin said too, or just me?
You can actually, Dan can say all that you just said, and I can add after what I said.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So just announce the start time and then just take it away, Danny.
Okay, I'm gonna start it now. Yeah, it's an interesting pick for the Kings, in my opinion. He has had head coaching experience. He was the Flyers coach before being fired, and Laviolette replaced him. And as we know, Laviolette took the Flyers to the Cup that year in 2010. But still, with the amount of coaches that have been fired this year, it's interesting that they just bumped up an assistant coach to the head coaching position instead of looking for an alternative. It seemed to me like it was pretty like they fired Sutter and went immediately to Stevens. So it doesn't, to me, it doesn't appear that they gave it much thought to look outside of, the organization and maybe try to pursue a guy like Dan Bilesma or a Lindy Ruff or something like that. They kind of just, it was almost like an impulse change in a way. So for me, the Kings kind of missed the mark there. I think they missed out on an opportunity to, maybe Stevens ends up being the coach anyway, but at least give it a chance and take a look somewhere else. Because that core has had 1-2 cups this decade, so it's not like they're old and arthritic or anything. They just need a couple changes made, and they could be, like we've said before a million times, all the Kings have to do is make the playoffs, and they'll make some noise. So. As a Kings fan, I think I would be pretty disappointed with who they selected as their coach.
No, is it? I thought Bartman was going. I'm sorry.
No.
Okay, I'll just chime in.
Oh yeah.
All right, 3, 2, 1. I think just make a note. All right, so 3, 2, 1. All right. I think it's one of those things where Stevens, he had an interesting start in Philly. They made the playoffs, and then they were kind of like that big favorite before 2010, and they were definitely on the outside looking in. I'm trying to remember exactly how far out of the playoffs they were, but I remember it was pretty, somewhat significant for the expectations they had going into that year. So that's his last stint as a head coach, and maybe he's had some time to learn some things. Obviously, sitting behind the bench with Sutter for a long time now, because the Kings bench hired by Philly, he took over after the 2010 season. He joined there as an assistant coach, and then when they fired Terry Murray, he actually coached there, I believe, for a few games before Sutter came in. So he's kind of been the right-hand man of Sutter behind the bench, and maybe they think the core, he's the guy that can maybe fix these guys. Because out of all the potential coaching candidates, who other than John Stevens potentially has a pulse on what makes the players on LA's roster tick? Because it's been the same core essentially since 2012. So. It's interesting, a lot of nepotism, it feels like, in LA with Blake and Robitaille getting promotions and them looking internally for the next head coach. But I think if you're an assistant with 2 cups to your name and you worked with Sutter and you're kind of his right-hand man, and you've seen it with Cassidy in Boston. He had kind of a rough stint in Washington, however many years ago that was, and years later, he gets the chance as the interim with Boston, and he completely turned them around after they fired Julian. So maybe, just maybe, Stevens is cut to be a head coach again. And but it's interesting that LA kind of just seemed to promote all their friends instead of looking externally to make changes. So we'll see how it works out for him. It might have been good to kind of blend some external thinking rather than internal thinking. Seems like a lot of group thinks going on with the Kings, but. Stevens is one of those guys. The point I was trying to get at is I think Stevens probably gets a look from another club if LA doesn't hire him. So he was probably going to be a head coach again sooner rather than later. And I think LA kind of decided that it was time for him to be a coach. And, he was the guy for them. So we'll see what happens. All right. What next topic do we want to do? Do we want to just jump?
I was gonna say like when you said he's his right hand man, I would say that'd be a time to just like quickly touch on Mike Kitchen and Quenville, or in the Hawks.
Okay.
Like we can kind of touch on it for a couple minutes.
And didn't Kitchen used to be with the Kings?
I thought he was.
Wasn't Mike Kitchen? Didn't Mike Kitchen win a cup with the Kings? Or no, that's Jamie Compton or whatever.
Yeah, he went from. Yeah, he
went
from the Kings to the Hawks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about assistants real quick. All right.
I'm looking at Kitchen right now.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna go 3, 2, 1. Actually, boys. Speaking of right-hand men, as Blackhawk fans, earlier this morning we got some news about the Blackhawks parting ways with assistant coach Mike Kitchen, and really interested to hear your thoughts on this, guys, because he was kind of thought of as Q's right-hand man. They're close personally. They've had success with him on the staff. He's kind of been in charge of some special teams for them. And Stan Bowman had his exit press conference after, of course, they had been swept by Nashville in the first round. First time the top seed in the West has ever been swept in the first round. So the Hawks have that going for them. But they get rid of Kitchen, and this comes after Quenville had said that he didn't expect any changes to his coaching staff. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because is there potentially anything drastic? But it seems as though that, there might be sort of a power struggle brewing. I mean, if you got a coach expecting certain guys on the staff to come back and the GM thinks otherwise, almost makes it seems like the relationship between the head coach and the GM is an interesting point. But want to hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I didn't see this coming. Obviously, I watched the press conference with Stan saying that there would be changes, and he was obviously pretty frustrated. And he assured everybody that Joel would still be the head coach. But yeah, it's I guess a power struggle is maybe a good phrase for it. Kitchens won 2 cups with the Hawks, 13 and 15. He came right after the Hawks won in 10. I forget who he replaced there, but Quenville and Kitchen have also coached together in St. Louis from 98 to 03. So they've been like really together, like you're saying. So, I wasn't expecting it. And Bowman was quoted as saying that he denied any rift between he and Joel right now, but you got to think he's not happy. Q's not happy with losing, like we were saying, his right-hand man. And it's interesting to point out, too, that Kitchen was in charge of power play and defense. That was basically what he sort of specialized in. So I guess Bowman thinks that's and I would agree. Obviously, the Hawks penalty kill from basically start to finish was pretty shitty, to put it bluntly. So, it'll be interesting to see going forward what more changes Bowman's going to make and who he adds on to replace Kitchen.
Yeah, I kind of see this as sort of a shakedown of the coaching staff, because obviously something's wrong with the Hawks. We've seen it in the last 2 years. So, this move, obviously, we can't see it yet, but next year we'll see if this change has any sort of positive effect. But Quenville can't be too happy, because, like you said, they've been coaching for, I think it's like 14 years or something like that. He's been his right-hand man. And so if I were head coach, that's something that I would not be very happy with. And it has to lead you to believe that there might be some sort of tension between Quenville and the front office.
I definitely think there might be some tension in it. I don't want to say power struggle sounds dramatic, but there's got to be some tension there, because one criticism of Q, and he got some praise for kind of changing his stance on it this year, because the Blackhawks almost sort of had to with their cap situation. They had to play a lot of young guys this year, like, couldn't sign Andrew Shaw. So, Ryan Hartman gets a chance to step up. Schmaltz fills the void there in the top 6 for quite some time. They have Panic playing on the low. So he kind of was forced to play some younger guys. But at the same time, the Blackhawks have also recently traded some younger guys before they really got a chance, and seemed like Q kind of lost faith in a lot of guys, such as Marco Dano, who, of course, they acquired along with the Anisimov and the Brand Saad trade. Teuvo Teravainen got traded to Carolina in the Bickle trade. And they also traded Philip Deneau to at the deadline last year, when they got Thomas Fleischman and Dale Weiss. So there's been a lot of young guys who haven't really gotten a chance, and those are all guys Bowman, of course, brought in himself, and that it seemed like Quenneville decided that win with those guys, or he didn't think the Blackhawks had the best chance with those guys playing increased roles. So it seems as though that this might be a sign from Bowman in a not so subtle way that, hey, I've scratched your back. I've constructed the roster the best I can with the salary cap situation, mixed with your feelings on certain players, and I've given you the best roster I can considering the circumstances, and we've gotten knocked out now in the first 2 rounds. So I think now Stan's going to try to have a lot more control over the personnel, and we'll see how Quenneville reacts to that. And we may never know this, but we'll see how involved he is with the next coaching decision, if he has any say on who the new assistant is too.
Yeah, I was just going to say an important part of this is who replaces Mike Kitchen. But, I'm going to hashtag trust and Stan on this one because, he's only done the right things. Only made the right moves in the last few years. So I think he'll make a home run hire.
Yeah, I think I like you just said, I have faith in him to make the right decision. I don't necessarily fault him for firing Kitchen. I think there does need to be changes made, like we were saying, the 2 first-round exits. Obviously, something's not right. So, sometimes you have to do some things that you maybe don't like. And Kitchen's probably one of those things that it kind of sucks to do, but he had to do it. But yeah, I mean, I have full faith in Stan to find somebody, that's just as effective as Kitchen. And while we're on it too, thank you, Kitchen, for helping lead the Hawks to 2 cups in 13 and 15. Obviously, his efforts don't go unnoticed by us fans. So, I give him applause for what he's done in the past.
Mm-hmm. And by all accounts, you don't know behind the scenes, but by all accounts, also really well-liked guy. So obviously this might not sit well with a few of the players, and they might be feeling accountable for, his now absence from the organization. So
yeah,
might light a fire under their bellies.
I was just going to say, kind of be a kick in the ass to the players. Like, this level of play is unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seems, Mike Kitchen, the reason they got swept in the first round, no, but is he quite a scapegoat? Maybe not with the way the special teams played this year, but definitely think this is a move that shows Bowman's going to assert a little more control. Players need to be held more accountable, and it's time to expect more in the playoffs, because that was the most angry I've ever heard Stan Bowman, because he's a very calm, cool, collected guy. He's not big on really showing too much fire, but he was, he basically said it was blatantly unacceptable that they would have the season that they had, and all the accomplishments are washed aside when it doesn't matter that you get number 1 in the West if you don't even win a game in the playoffs and you scored 3 goals or 3 or 4 goals in 4 games. So, but one last thing, we're going to talk about the playoffs. We know you're all at home, want to hear about the playoffs. We're going to give you our thoughts in the first round and second round, but maybe this can kind of be our segue. So, Carey Price, it's just nuts to me. There's all these fan-driven rumors, and Mark Bergevin, the Montreal GM today, had to blatantly say, "I'm not going to be trading Carey Price," because why would you trade Carey Price? I think it's fair to say that Lundqvist outplayed King Hank, definitely outplayed Carey Price in the first round. If you look at the numbers, I feel like Carey Price, the numbers were good enough for his team to win, but at the same time, he did only give up a few goals, but they were kind of almost back-breaking goals, if you will. One of the ones in Game 6 was pretty rough, so that you'd think he'd like to have back. So, guys, your thoughts on Carey Price, the first round? I mean, it's just nuts that there's no substance to any of these Carey Price rumors, but people expect a lot out of the guy and expect him to be perfect. But I think it's just more of an indictment on how underperforming, how much the Montreal forwards underperformed, because that guy played pretty damn well and they just didn't score for him.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say I don't know why anybody would suggest trading what.
It's nuts.
Yeah, what I think both of you, and I think a majority of people would say is probably the best goaltender in the league. Holtby might have a case for that too, and obviously Lundqvist as well. But to me, it's not. Maybe there's a goal or two that Carey Price would like back, but to me, and this happens every year with the Canadians. To me, it's not. The Canadians don't lose because Carey Price gave up a goal or a bad goal or two. It's because the Canadians fail to produce goals. And so for me, I look more at the forwards, Max Pacioretty, Galchenyuk, Gallagher, those kinds of guys. That's kind of where, to me, the finger goes before Carey Price is. And you got to give props to Lundqvist. I know I was kind of wishy-washy on this series. In our podcast, I said the Rangers would win in 6, but then I did the preview, and I sort of realized that I was giving the edge to the Canadians and everything. So then in my blog, I said the Canadians would win. So I'm not really going to take credit for being correct because I kind of hopped on the Canadian bandwagon. But to me, it shows that the Rangers are still a very good playoff team as well. And kind of the thing that I like the most is that it shuts up the Canadians fans that in 2014 they said, oh, the only reason why the Rangers won is because Chris Kreider hurt Price in Game 1, and we had to have a backup. Well, now Price played all 6 games and the Rangers still won. So to me, I blame the forwards and possibly the D more so than Carey Price. But yeah, to suggest that Price should be traded is absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, the last person you should put all the blame on is Carey Price. I mean, we saw this year. I mean, they finished right at the top of their division, and last year when he was out for a majority of the year, they finished right at the bottom. So, I mean, this is just one of those things where everyone thinks they're a GM, everyone thinks they know what's best for their organization. I mean, that's just pretty absurd to say that you can do without the best goalie in the league. I mean, really.
I think it's just amazing. You look at it. I actually picked Montreal in 7 on this very podcast because of how much I believe in Carey Price. I kind of wanted to pick New York, but my head, I guess, if you will, I don't know if that makes sense. It just kept pointing me toward Montreal. I just thought, Henrik Lundqvist, does he have another run in him? Carey Price plays so well, maybe with Pacioretty and Galchenyuk and Radulov. Even though New York plays kind of a suffocating style of hockey under Vigneault, maybe this is the chance Montreal has to get by him. But when it just came down to it, they didn't really get a lot of production up front. They don't really have a whole lot of firepower. You look at it on paper, you got Radulov, you got Pacioretty, you got Galchenyuk. Be able to bury a few pucks and, regardless of the system you're playing against. And they got good goaltending. They ran into a hot goalie. I mean, Henrik was out of his mind. If you look at Price's numbers and you can look at the game, just with your own eye test and go, wow, Henrik Lundqvist outplayed Carey Price. That's an amazing, a major tip of the cap to Henrik. But just another case of, it's always something with Montreal. The Price is injured and or they're not scoring for him, when he is playing all 6 games in the series and not getting any help up front. So, wow, pretty wild that people would even suggest that. But now the Rangers are moving on and they're playing Ottawa. So, guys, any initial thoughts on that series? It's going to be That's going to be a wild one. I definitely think that New York's got the edge in in goaltending in that one, and they play a little more of a tighter system. But Ottawa runs on Erik Karlsson, and that's a pretty good guy you want to ride this time of year. So, boys, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it will be another pretty awesome goalie matchup to watch again. Craig Anderson is not a pushover in any regard. I, too, would give the edge, though, to Lundqvist. I think the Rangers will take this one, and I'm going to say in 6 again. Ottawa is playing awesome right now. They're getting production from Bobby Ryan. Like you just said, Karlsson, of course, is an absolute force to be reckoned with, and Anderson's not playing too shabby either. He took out Tuukka Rask and the Bruins. But some Rangers play. They've got a little bit more experience. They've made deeper runs in these last few years. Going to a Cup final in 14, going to an Eastern Conference final in 15. I think they're poised to make another Eastern Conference final again here. And does Ottawa has home ice, right?
Ottawa does have home ice.
They do, yeah.
Okay. Even though the Rangers finished higher in points. See, that's why I don't like the new playoff format, because the Rangers had 10 more points, 12 more points than Ottawa. But that being said, it doesn't really matter to me. I think the Rangers will steal one at home or on the road. I think they'll do a good job at MSG. I think they've maybe gotten over that hump a little bit where they've been struggling at home. I think they'll take it in 6.
Yeah,
I don't
it'll be
think the
interesting.
point difference was that drastic, though. But it's still a shame, though. But I guess that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But go ahead, Kev.
It'll be interesting because I think last series we didn't really get to get a good evaluation on how how explosive the Ottawa Senators offense is, because to be honest, I don't think the Bruins have the best defense in the league, and then you go from playing the Bruins to the Rangers, who have pretty solid defensive depth. So just looking up and down Ottawa's lines, they got a lot of guys who can score, which you saw throughout the series. And like you said, Dan, you got Bobby Ryan going, Kyle Turris, Derek Brassard. It's just, you got so many guys that can score, and I think it's going to be cool. I think game 1's going to be interesting to see who's going to set the tone for the series. Erik Karlsson playing with 2 fractures in his ankle is absurd, first off. So it'll be a good series. For prediction, I'll have to say New York at 6, though, just due to the overwhelming amount of defensive depth they have. I think they'll be able to kind of choke out the Ottawa offense.
Yeah, and correction, real quick, Nick. Like you said, it wasn't that drastic. It was 4. There's a 4-point difference. It was 102 to 98. The points were. So I just wanted to make that correction.
No worries. Point still stands. The playoff format can be a little funny sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially when the fact that New York, just this last series, it's the same thing where they had I believe they finished higher than Montreal as well last series. So another series where they had more regular season points, but since they played in the vaunted Metro division, they kind of on the road to get themselves in the series. So as far as a prediction goes, Kevin, you were talking about a lot about New York's defensive depth. I'm not quite as high on New York's defensive depth. I think it's a little speak. We've got Brace G and of course Ryan McDonough. So those guys are really good players. And when you're facing Boston, Chara's lost a step. McAvoy looked good, but he was just young. McAvoy looked really good. Boston's got a great future. Just to touch on that really quick, that team's got a really bright future.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Oh, I think you're talking about it, Kevin. The forward depth, when you can roll 4 lines like Ottawa can, and New York solid, maybe top 4. But, once you get toward the end there, I think Ottawa could kind of sort of impose their will. But I just think Henrik Lundqvist and just the style of play the Rangers play, I think Vigneault's style kind of makes up for number 5 or number 6 defenseman that the Rangers have. I mean, obviously they acquired Brendan Smith at the deadline, but New York's got just enough guys that can score, and they play a 200-foot game. Everyone's trust the system. You've got Lundqvist. I think they take it in 7 games, but I think the fact that Ottawa has so much depth at forward, New York bottom pairing defensemen, and their tight system, because Ottawa's got guys that could step up and get a big goal, and I feel like that's more so than what you can say about the Rangers. But New York's got, but like Dan said, Anderson's no slouch. I'll take the Rangers in 7. I wanted to take them last series, but I just think Carey Price is going to outdo a Lundqvist, and I think that Montreal's going to get enough scoring. So I think I learned my lesson betting against my heart with the Rangers. So I'm going to take them in this series. So staying in the East, arguably the most exciting matchup. We pretty much all thought it was inevitable. So at least we got something right, boys. But Pittsburgh, Washington, just when do you guys go? I mean, this is awesome. I can't wait for this.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this series, as I think just about anybody in the hockey world is. I have always been a Caps. The Caps are usually the team that I bandwagon onto if the Hawks don't make it. I'm doing so again this year. I want the Caps to win, and I think that they can do it. I'm going to take the Caps in 7, which I have a feeling the two of you are going to disagree and go with Pittsburgh. But I think the Caps can do it this year. I think they've got that salty taste in their mouth from last year. And a good point that the NBCSN guys pointed out was the Caps last year played the Flyers and beat them 4-2. And the Flyers aren't a fast, skilled team like the Pens are. And so when the Caps and the Pens met last year, I think the Caps were caught a little flat-footed because they weren't, sort of up to speed with the Pens. Well, this year they got a hell of a scare with Toronto. And Toronto's got young, fast talent, 7 rookies that all have been playing like they've been in the league for 5-6 years. So I think the Caps are poised to do it this year. They're up to speed. They got a hell of a scare from the Leafs. They know, that they can't take any nights off with anybody. So I'm going to say Caps in 7. I want it to go 7 regardless of who wins, because that just means I get to watch 7 games of 2 of the most skilled teams duking it out and going at it. And I really, really don't want the Pens to repeat, because that's something the Hawks weren't able to do in 10-13, or, they weren't able to do it in 14. So I'm going to say Caps in 7. I hope so.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say Pens in 7, because just looking at looking at what we've seen lately, the Penguins have made pretty quick work out of Columbus, and for the most part, they just absolutely dominated that series. And on the other hand, you had the Caps, who kind of hit a roadblock for a little bit against Toronto, who's a really young team, very good team, but really young team, someone who they should have gotten through right away. So. And just, I want the Caps to win very badly, because if anything, I just want Elsa Ovechkin to get a cup. He's probably the number 1 player in hockey right now who I think should have a cup. Maybe
Lundqvist,
absolutely. Yes, Lundqvist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But kind of like I said with Ottawa, just the amount of tools that Pittsburgh has at forward. Like, you got Kessel, obviously Crosby, Malkin, etc. I just think they can throw out so much explosive offense in a game, and it's just going to be overwhelming, in my opinion. Hope it goes 7. Really hope it goes 7.
Yeah. One interesting note, earlier today, coach Mike Sullivan, he mentioned that Matt Murray hasn't even resumed skating yet from his injury. So it's looking like it's going to be Flower, at least in the first couple games. So obviously these two teams matched up last year in the playoffs, and we know who got the better end of that one. But that was them riding Murray in the playoffs, and now you've got Fleury. I tend to agree with Kevin here. I love the versatility of the Penguins forwards. They have just guys that can do everything, just so many guys with high hockey IQs that can play so many different ways with so many different guys, be clutch at so many different moments. That forward group is just really good. I normally would have taken Penguins in 6. I'm thinking with Letang out, obviously he's out, and not having access to Murray. I think Fleury, we've known Fleury's had some playoff meltdowns in the past, but you got guys like Patrick Hornfus and Nick Bonino. Those are like, just, those guys just have the sickest hockey IQs. Those guys are just so responsible in their own end, and they can score too, and they complement guys like Crosby and Malkin and Kessel so well. And, Phil Kessel, I think he plays a lot smarter of a game now playing in Pittsburgh, versus his time in Boston and Toronto. But he can do that because he has this luxury of playing with just these uberly smart and skilled players. And I think Pittsburgh's still got some good defensemen. I think Fleury's still a good goalie. The thing with Washington, I don't know if you guys agree, but it seemed like a lot of their secondary pieces for Washington almost kind of carried them through that series. It was we all know about Justin Williams being clutch, but, guys like him and Johansson and even Tom Wilson getting a big goal in that series. It seemed like they could have definitely gotten more out of Ovechkin and Backstrom, at least in my opinion, in the first round. Whereas, Crosby, Malkin, Kessel, those guys are just on fire. So, just playing all over all different areas of the ice. But long story short, I'm taking Pittsburgh in 7. Want to hear your guys' opinions. Do you guys think this is the winner of this series? Is this your Eastern Conference representative, or would you guys even go as far as saying that this is the Stanley Cup in the second round? Do you think
this is a Cup champ?
Yeah, I'm definitely Eastern Conference rep, and looking at the teams in the West, I don't see anybody hanging with them. The only teams that maybe would be able to keep up in terms of speed would be Edmonton or Nashville. We saw the speed of Nashville against the Hawks, and it was painful to watch. But Nashville's quick, and Edmonton obviously has a lot of young players too, and they're also getting a lot of secondary scoring. Like the Caps are. To me, that's really important to get secondary scoring, even more so than primary. So the fact that, in Ovechkin, I think he'll turn around and start producing. I think the reason why I'm taking the Caps in 7 is I'm kind of banking on, Letang being out, that really hurting the Pens, and also Fleury being in that, because like Rene, like we've mentioned in the past, I think Fleury's a pretty big mental midget. When he lets a couple pass him, and he's struggled in the playoffs before. They can't rely on Murray this year because he pulled his groin or whatever it was. So I think if there's any year for the Caps to do it, this is the year that they can finally get over that damn second round hump and, take out the thorn that's been in their side for so many years. And yeah, like you two were saying, I want Ovechkin to win a cup. I want Oshie to win a cup. I love Barry Trotz, the head coach. I'd love to see him win a cup. So I'm just hoping and praying that they, that Ovechkin and Backstrom come out to play, and then the secondary scoring continues for them as well. But either way, this is going to be just a hell of a series, and I am so excited to watch Game 1 when that comes on. I'm really pumped for that. But this is definitely going to be the cup winner, I think, right here.
Yeah, and just a really quick note, seeing Pittsburgh can get Carl Hagelin back during the series, so that's a piece that we haven't seen thus far in the playoffs.
And he was huge last year on the
HBK.
He was crucial, yeah.
So, like I said, Pittsburgh, not that Washington doesn't have depth, but I just feel like Pittsburgh's depth players are just. I would definitely take Pittsburgh's bottom six, and based on health, I'm probably taking the Washington defense here. You add Shattenkirk, at the deadline, and you've got good stay-at-home guys like Alsner and stuff on that team, and obviously John Carlson's a great defenseman, but Pittsburgh's lacking there because of health. Just getting Mata back, not having Letang at their disposal. I think at the end of the day, they're just going to need Braden Holtby to be Braden Holtby. Washington gets good play out of Braden Holtby. We were talking about the Pittsburgh goaltending situation this series because of not having yet resumed skating, but would Braden Holtby be your guys' X factor? Or if it's not him, who's your X factor in the series? Because I feel like with Washington's D and the talent of Holtby, if they could slow down Pittsburgh's offense enough, and with how banged up in general and on defense, I think if they get really good goaltending with the defensive depth they have and their offensive potency themselves, that the Stars wake up this series, I think that's where Washington has their best chance to succeed. But if you're going to let the Pittsburgh forwards kind of control the tempo of the game, and they're the ones getting all the chances, and Flower steps up, so I just think it's going to honestly be whoever gets the best goaltending. I think Washington's going to need a big series from Holtby to win, and he's more than capable of doing it. But I'm taking Pittsburgh, but X factor's boys.
X factor to me is definitely goaltending here. There are a lot of X factors that you could pick, like you just said, primary scoring from Ovechkin versus Crosby, stuff like that. And the defense, I think Caps definitely have the edge in D. But I think the real X factor is definitely going to be Holtby versus Flower. And I would also give that edge to the Caps as well. I can see Holtby just being an absolute monster for them. And maybe Fleury will too, but I still see Holtby being, just a little bit better than Flower in this series, which is why I'm, giving the edge to the Caps here.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. And just to add to that, I think the top six of Washington has to put pressure on Fleury right from the get-go. Because like you said, he can, kind of be one of those guys that melts down if he lets one in. So putting pressure on Fleury right away from the top six, which we haven't really seen much production from out of Washington, is key for me.
For sure. So if we look toward the West, so I think we're all kind of in agreement that at the very least, even though we respect Ottawa and New York, these were the two best teams, in the Eastern Conference by a long shot, and the NHL, just based on the way they've been playing all year. So we're pretty sure this series is going to decide who's going to represent the East and probably even be your next Stanley Cup champion. But we kind of have an interesting bracket out West, and I'm curious, a lot of the favorites throughout the year, Minnesota in the beginning and then the Blackhawks down the stretch. Favorites, I think you've got Anaheim now, who's riding either a 17 or an 18-game streak where they haven't lost in regulation. Of course, quickly taking out the Flames in the first round, and the Blackhawks. St. Louis dismantles Minnesota. Edmonton, they take out last year's Western Conference Stanley Cup final in the form of San Jose. So maybe that this can be the way we talk about two series here in the West, but be the one we cover first based on whoever has a strong opinion on it. But who's the favorite in the West right now? Because I think, even though homers, but I think we all thought Chicago had a really good shot to go to the Stanley Cup, but now that they're out and their series have unfolded, who's the favorite in the West right now? Is there a favorite?
I don't know. I think all four teams are pretty solid. When you look at them from the goaltending that each one of them's getting to their blue line and their offense, they're getting pretty solid work from everybody. Anaheim and Nashville both got some crazy bounces to go their way. in their series, but that's also the result of, outworking your opponent. And then St. Louis just absolutely dismantled the Wild with Allen playing like an absolute monster. And then I think Edmonton was another one of those teams like Nashville that really surprised everybody. I had San Jose winning that in 6, and it was the other way around. It was Edmonton winning it in 6. I guess, you would have to take Anaheim as a favorite maybe because of their past success, going to the conference final in 15, but they've also failed a lot too, actually. They still haven't won that game 7 at home in 4 years. They've lost that. I'm going to take Anaheim in 6 and St. Louis in 6 for these two. I think Allen is going to continue his really good play, and I think St. Louis is just playing 20 times better than the Hawks were. So I think eventually Pecorine is going to let a couple behind him, and that's where he's going to start to collapse. And I think the St. Louis defense, in the same way that they sort of were able to stifle, I know the Wild had a lot of shots on goal, but they didn't have a lot of pucks in the net. I think St. Louis might be able to do that as well to Nashville, which is why I'm going to take St. Louis. And then I just think the experience of Anaheim is going to trump the youth of Edmonton. But, then again, Edmonton took out San Jose. Like I said, that's your defending Western Conference champion, and they're already out. So, who the hell knows? I could see any one of these 4 teams winning. So, but my picks are Anaheim and St. Louis.
Yeah, the West is wide open for me. I think Nashville and St. Louis should be a really good series. The goaltending is going to be something that I'm really going to watch. It's going to be sort of who breaks first in Pecorine and Jake Allen. I'm going to agree with Dan. I'll say that Jake Allen just continues his absolute tear. And then Edmonton and Anaheim is going to be a really interesting series because you got a team in Anaheim who's had a lot of recent playoff success in the earlier rounds at least. And a team who hasn't just first time in the playoffs in 10 years in Edmonton. So Edmonton's fast. I honestly like Edmonton, to be honest, in that series. And then out of the then from the Central, I'm gonna also say St. Louis, just due to goaltending. We saw firsthand out of Nashville, they were a pretty lethal team. But to be honest, I think that was a pretty defeated, and that's not the Blackhawks team that we're used to seeing. So I think Nashville will be exposed pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. We had talked about it earlier, too, when we thought that us might square off for the fact that both goalies have kind of proven in the past that they've been known to crumble once things kind of start not going their way. And the Blackhawks never really challenged Rene, offensively speaking. And Jake Allen was challenged, but he answered the bell. I mean, that game 1. Where they stole game 1 out in Minnesota, and that's kind of what I think gave the Blues confidence in that series was they got outshot 52-26 in game 1. I mean, literally outshot 2-1, and Jake Allen just steps up. He makes, I think it was 51 or 50 saves. I forget what the score was, but I mean, that guy he just got peppered all game, and he just answered the question, answered the bell every time. And Rene really wasn't challenged, which gives me an inclination that maybe Allen's the guy that's probably going to have the best odds to have a better series. And St. Louis maybe protects their home ice a lot better than Chicago did against them. So the Blues are playing well. They played really well going down the stretch. Allen's been playing fantastic. We haven't seen Rene quite get challenged yet. So I'm going to think that I definitely going to think that it's going to be St. Louis, and I'm going to take them in. I'm going to take them in 6. I think a lot of people are really high on Nashville, but I don't think that St. Louis is going to allow Nashville to play their game like the Blackhawks did. And I think my favorite, honestly, in the West is going to be Anaheim. And But I'm not going to count out Edmonton. I don't know if you guys want to chime in here real quick. When San Jose put up a touchdown on them in Game 4, I think most people probably thought that, oh no, the Oilers had their chance and they just completely laid an egg in Game 4. Let them tie it up, 2-2, and then, but Edmonton, finds a way to win the next two. Would you guys agree that you thought that Edmonton was probably dead men walking after that 7-0 game, boys?
Yeah, I thought that would have been like the turning point. You know how there's always, in really close series, there's always a specific game or series of events that can end up being a turning point and sway the momentum. And I thought for sure that the Sharks would have rode that going back to Edmonton and then coming back. Certainly, even though they lost Game 5, I thought, all right, this will go 7 because San Jose will win at home. And obviously Edmonton proved me wrong. So, Nick, like you were saying, I've got Anaheim, like I said, moving on in 6, but I am not going to count out the Oilers at all. And to me, that could be a really fun series to see McDavid going up against, the likes of Kessler and all them. If I was Randy Carlyle, I'd probably just put Kessler up against McDavid and just make McDavid's life a living hell. And it's shown the Sharks were able to do it in game 7. Game 3 that they put up 7 goals? Wow, I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart. But they frustrated the hell out of McDavid, and they got him way off of his game, and he was basically invisible that game. And I think the Ducks are going to be able to do it. They're just going to have to get past Talbot. He's been playing really well. But then so is Gibson. Gibson's been playing very well too.
Yeah.
Gibson's been playing very well. And he's kind of been flying under the radar compared to, a lot of the other big name goalies that have been playing well. Allen, Rene are big names that we think of this year. And then obviously Holtby and Lundqvist in the East. But Gibson's just been, focused and determined, and he's been playing really, really well for the Ducks.
All year. And
yeah,
the Ducks are riding that hot streak like I had talked about. So kind of getting to my prediction. I'm going to take Anaheim. Don't bet against Edmonton because that series looked like it had completely flipped on them, but they found a way, and obviously who would have thought McDavid would have carried them to the second round. So they're almost playing with house money right now. So and your point about Gibson, I think he's definitely a tougher matchup, than Martin Jones was. Martin Jones is a really solid middle-of-the-pack goaltender, good enough guy that got San Jose the Cup last year. But please correct me if I'm wrong. Your point about Gibson flying under the radar, I'm pretty sure he's top 5 in the league in save percentage this year. He plays out in Anaheim, West Coast team, so that's why nobody knows that this team is just literally not losing. They're just not losing. Them having home ice, I bring this point up a lot. I'm a big believer in home ice advantage, even though my team was goal-stricken by it. But I'm a big proponent of having home ice, and Anaheim's center depth, those guys are unbelievably good on face-offs. And, a lot of McDavid's zone start time is in the offensive zone. He's not taking a lot of defensive draws. Like, predominantly a lot of the ice time, he's starting in the offensive zone because they're trying to generate scoring, and he's playing, the power play minutes and stuff. And when you've got guys like Kessler and Vermette that can win draws and are damn near tops of the league, and McDavid's going to be starting in the offensive zone a lot, and, you've got that last change home ice advantage, I just think that Anaheim's really going to be able to just play the matchup game pretty hard on Edmonton. I think they've got the goaltending edge with Gibson, and they've got enough guys that can score. So I'm going to be taking Anaheim here in 6. I think Edmonton makes it really interesting, no matter how good your goalie is or your defense are. Connor McDavid's a world-class player. Draisaitl's been fantastic. Edmonton got some nice contributions from some depth pieces like Cashin and Desharnais in that series, and their defense. It was kind of bend but don't break at times, and obviously the 7-0 game was pretty rough. But I think Anaheim's definitely poised, I think, to make a serious run here, and they're probably my pick to represent the West in the Cup. But I think it's going to be them in St. Louis in a conference final here. So that's my pick.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Cam Talbot's going to have have a huge series. He's gonna have to come up big. But just a note, like, who would have thunk at the beginning of the year you're gonna be picking the Blues in the Western Conference Finals, huh?
Yeah, honestly.
Imagine the storyline here too. If you get a Blues Caps Cup and you got Shattenkirk, I want out because maybe he wants to go. He's an East Coast guy, maybe he wanted to go back home and play East, but he might get dealt mid-season by St. Louis and play him in the Cup. Obviously there's a lot that needs to be sorted out for that to become a reality. But it's pretty interesting that Shattenkirk, might have asked out. He wants to go on a big run here in Pittsburgh, and Washington, who of course acquired him, showed interest. And it's very possible that Pittsburgh beats Washington. Shattenkirk sitting on the golf course while the Blues are in the conference finals. Could you imagine that? And it's just crazy. I remember mentioning that I thought the Blues would probably trade Shattenkirk, but still try to sneak into the playoffs. But Mike Yeo, after that trade, man, he really rallied those guys, and they finished the season on a hell of a tear, and as did Anaheim, and so I think we're set up for a really, really exciting second round of the playoffs.
Yeah, and real quick, just for Edmonton, I think this is kind of obvious or like a no duh thing, but Connor McDavid's going to have to, return to his regular season form, so to speak. He's been sort of held off the score sheet, so he's going to have to, kind of get back to where he belongs in terms of his level of play.
Yeah, I would agree too.
Toast.
I'd agree too, and I'd say that Anaheim is definitely not as conducive for Connor McDavid scoring that San Jose was. I think Anaheim's face-off prowess, their team defense, their goaltending, I think it's a worse recipe for Connor McDavid to score versus San Jose. And you'd say the opposite last year based on the way San Jose was playing, but I think McDavid against the Ducks it's not going to be as easy for him to score as it was this past series. And like you said, they're going to need a big series. So that's really why I got Anaheim, because I think they got the goaltending and the home ice with the last change and everything. I think they're just a matchup nightmare for Edmonton, but I think these young kids have enough to steal a game or two in that series. So I'll take Anaheim in 6, but the Ducks are just so hot right now. That's what sports is. You got to be hot at the right time, and no one's hotter than the Ducks, but you don't know it because they play in Anaheim, California.
Yep. Exactly. And I think, like you just touched on, I think Anaheim's, I just think the way that they play, and like I said, the whole Kessler thing, he went up against Taves in 15, and now he's probably, I would imagine he would go up against McDavid again, and I just think he's going to be able to stifle him and really just frustrate the hell out of him, which just said that's what, and the goaltending is what's leading me to think that Anaheim is going to win it in 6. And just a quick note for Allen and the Rene matchup again. The other reason why I think Allen is going to stay successful is because he's got a guy like Marty Brodeur, kind of watching from afar, and who else to get playoff experience and tips from than a guy that's won the Cup, however many times, just a super successful career like that. Rene, I don't think Rene really has anybody to rely on like that, and if you're Allen, you're going to be like a sponge and soak up everything that Brodeur has to tell you, to be successful in the playoffs. And for that reason, I think Brodeur is going to be able to maintain Allen's, Allen's pretty level-headed right now. And I think Brodeur is going to help him keep that level-headedness in this series, which again is why I'm going to take St. Louis in 6 there. So, but we'll see. I mean, it really could go either way for both series. I could see any of the 4 teams in the Western Conference Final. I think, like we're saying, the West is wide open here.
I think it's a lot of these series seem really close on both sides. I honestly could see any of the 4 series that we have left going either way. So it's really easy to sit there and go, oh, it's pretty even. I'm going to take this in 7, but I'm pretty sure I just said 3 out of 4 are going to a game 7. I mean, I think these are really tight series, and we didn't get a game 7 at all in the first round, but I think we have some pretty interesting matchups and storylines going where I definitely think there's some deep series potential. I don't think any of these series are going to end quick. I think that's kind of we've been making individual series predictions and and all that kind of sort of stuff, but I don't. I see no way any of these series go 5 or less. I mean, these are
Exactly.
I mean, these teams are really, really even in a lot of cases, and I mean, you look at a series like Washington or Pittsburgh, and how can you go wrong picking either of them in the series? I mean, you can look at history and go, well, history's told me time and time again Washington's not going to make it, but you can make the argument Washington's got a better defense, better goaltender. So why is it not the Caps year? But it's crazy. Just it's going to be really exciting, and I'm looking forward to it for sure. So we've covered some latest news, rumors, coaching decisions, potential power struggles in front offices, nepotism, and of course, a little bit of our Go with the Flow second round preview. Boys, if there's anything else you want to talk about, let's hear it, or else I think that's a wrap on episode 12, and we're looking forward to Wednesday night for the first 2 playoff matchups. So second round drops the puck at 8 Eastern time with Nashville and St. Louis, and then we have also got Edmonton and Anaheim that night. So the West starts on Wednesday, April 26th, and then the next night you got the 2 Eastern conference series. So, boys, any closing thoughts before we shut the door on this one?
No, I think we've covered everything for this week. Should be an exciting week. Like you said, the game's starting on Wednesday, action-packed hockey. So I love this time of year. Whether the Hawks are in it or not, this is awesome to watch hockey like this.
Well, we could stop right here and I'll edit this out. Are we going to be doing previews for the second round?
Like blogs, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay. It's one each, right?
Well,
somebody would still take 2.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I'll do I don't know. When I was talking about it, I feel more qualified to dive deeper into Anaheim, Edmonton for some reason. I'll do that.
That's fine.
We could ask maybe B Frank will want to do one.
Yeah, he probably would.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Kevin, if you want to say you're good or something, we can just.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll say yeah. B Frank just said hello.
He just said. I'll tell him to pick one here while you wrap it up, Kevin.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Just look out for some content in the near future. We'll have some series previews rolling out, so just be on the lookout for that. But other than that, yeah, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah. Cool. Check us out. Obviously, every week we're on Let Me Be Frank blog and on iTunes, and we also try to blog when we have time as well. So we'll be dropping a series preview here for each of the 4 playoff matchups that we have remaining here, second round. And Dan, Kevin, thanks for joining me as always. It was a fun day.
Absolutely. We'll see you fellas later.
Yeah, it's next time.